War never changes.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're doing a deep dive into the Fallout timeline, from the very first game through to the TV show today.
From where you're kneeling must seem like an 18-carat run of bad luck.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
The Fallout lore isn't too complex, but there is a lot of it, with the game world having an entire alternate history that begins centuries before you step out of your first vault. Much of Fallout's history is the history of our own world, with a few differences deep in the past. Things like the influence of the fictional Cabot family on Boston way back in the 18th century. But things get notably different around the Second World War, when Fallout pursues alternate forms of technology to us in the real world. Specifically, they invest hugely in nuclear physics, mastering nuclear fission and eventually nuclear fusion to create vast amounts of power. Energy is revolutionized, but other forms of technology, like television and radio, remain stuck in the 1950s, never moving on, except that they're nuclear powered now.
People enjoyed luxuries once thought the realm of science fiction. Domestic robots, fusion-powered cars.
Fallout is so concerned with technology and exploring the impact its futuristic tech has on the world that all of its biggest private companies work in science and technology, many of them becoming defense contractors for the US government. These are companies like Vault-Tec, Robco, and Repcon. Vault-Tec is, of course, hugely important because it's the company behind the vaults that save humanity, at least on paper. Robco Industries, meanwhile, was run by Mr. House before the war, and is responsible for practically all of the robots we encounter, as well as inventing the Stealth Boys. Finally, Repcon largely built rockets, but was crucially contracted by the US government to create new fuel sources, including nuclear fission, which makes the world go round.
War never changes.
The world was also reliant on fossil fuels by this point, a finite resource. But nuclear power was a finite resource too, because it depended on uranium. This eventually led the world's two largest superpowers, the United States and China, into conflict through the resource wars, beginning in 2052. Our only real look into what the world was like at this time is through the Liberation of Anchorage simulation, which shows American soldiers freeing Alaska from Chinese occupation. Alaska had been under occupation since 2066 when the Sino-American War broke out, but in early 2077 it was brought back into the US. China's power led to extreme paranoia within the US about the impact of communism, which again mirrors real life in the 1950s, when America was gripped by the Second Red Scare and thought communism was hiding around every corner. But in Fallout, these fears weren't unfounded. Not only were spies genuinely working to undermine America, as we see in Fallout 3's Point Lookout DLC, but China had armed submarines stationed around the coast. This, of course, culminated in the Great War, which lasted for all of 2 hours on October 23, 2077. America and China together, in the last hours of the Sino-American War, destroyed the world. Some people survived, either by descending into vaults or by finding refuge in other places. We can see this play out at the beginning of Fallout 4, as the sole survivor descends below the Commonwealth to be cryogenically frozen. In Fallout 3, we see that a community managed to survive by hiding in the Lamplight Caverns, creating Little Lamplight. On the other side of the country, Vegas was left largely unscathed because of Mr. House protecting it with his superior technology. But it would take a long time for the world to even begin to recover.
They returned with tales of a city untouched by the warheads that had scorched the rest of the world, and a great wall spanning the Colorado River.
With the exception of Fallout 4's opening, the earliest we've ever gone in the Fallout timeline is 2102, which is when Fallout 76 begins. You start in Vault 76, a vault designed to celebrate the signing of the Declaration of Independence back in 1776, when it opens 25 years after the war. Luckily, Vault 76 was one of Vault-Tec's control vaults, meaning it didn't have any sinister experiments running in the background. Even better, Appalachia is definitely a more pleasant place than other Fallout settings, though it's been ravaged by scorch beasts, which are enormous mutated bats. Because it's an MMO, the plot of Fallout 76 is always growing, with expansions released following the Zeta aliens and returning to Pittsburgh. But you spend the early hours and initial quests in the game trying to rid Appalachia of the Scorched Beasts and the infected humans they leave behind, known as the Scorched. It ends when you drop a nuclear bomb, but Appalachia bounces back from this quickly enough. Crucially, this is one of the earliest iterations of the Brotherhood of Steel we see, even though they were actually established in 2076, right before the Great War. But Fallout 76 is still set far away from the main continuity of games, since the story really begins in the year 2161 in California. This is where Fallout, a post-nuclear role-playing game, starts, almost 90 years after the war that destroyed the world. You're playing as the Vault Dweller, who's been chosen to leave Vault 13, another safe control vault, because the vault needs extra water chips to operate their water purifier. Otherwise, it's not going to survive. You leave the vault and soon encounter Shady Sands, a small town that's beaten the odds and already learned how to grow fresh crops in the wasteland. But it hasn't all been plain sailing. Shady Sands was founded by dwellers from Vault 15, a vault that was a social experiment gone awry when the dwellers, chosen because they held beliefs across the political spectrum, came into conflict. A group left and stole the vault's Gek when they did. That's a Garden of Eden creation kit, the crucial piece of pre-war technology that terraforms the wasteland to make it habitable. In Shady Sands, you're witnessing the birth of the new California Republic, which will be officially founded in 2189, 27 years after the first game begins. More on them later. Back in the 2160s, the wasteland is under threat. A group calling itself the Unity is growing, a cult with the aim of turning every human being into a super mutant, a giant green monster. Its leader is the Master, a mutant himself who wanted to use the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, to transform mankind. Like the Gek, the FEV is a key part of Fallout lore that will return time and time again. The quest for the water chips eventually leads the Vault Dweller into conflict with the Master. To pull off this final dramatic confrontation effectively, you'll have needed to explore the wasteland to get several key pieces of information, so that you can prove to the Master that the super mutants are sterile. This means that his all-mutant society is doomed, because it will be impossible for them to reproduce. When the Master realizes this, he sets his base, the Cathedral, to explode, scattering the Unity, known to others as the Master's army, far and wide.
Wonderful, amazing. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, what you've endured.
Between Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, we've actually got two spin-off games. These are the confusingly named Fallout Tactics Brotherhood of Steel, released in 2001, and Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, released in 2004. The former follows a Brotherhood campaign in the Midwest in 2197, as soldiers journey southwest to find the semi-mythical Vault Zero to claim its technology. They, again, come into conflict with mutants and a villain called the Calculator, a grotesque supercomputer powered by an amalgamation of real human brains, not too dissimilar to the Master himself. It's not clear which ending is the canon ending, but it almost certainly ends with the Brotherhood getting its hands on even more powerful world-ending technology, for better or worse.
Humanity once again starts to prosper.
The 2004 game, on the other hand, is set 19 years on, in 2208, following an initiate recently brought into the Brotherhood. Interestingly, 2208 is the same year that the original Vault Dweller leaves their town Arroyo for good. Unfortunately, this game was critically panned and doesn't offer too much new, though it is the only Fallout game set in Texas, taking place in the city of Carbon. You're fighting yet another army of mutants who are, in-game, modeling themselves on the Master. Fallout 2 sees another big time skip. It begins in the year 2241, and you're a new player character nicknamed the Chosen One, living in Arroyo, grandchild of the Vault Dweller. At the end of the first game, the Vault Dweller returned to Vault 13 to bring back the water chips, but was exiled by the Overseer. By 2167, Arroyo had been built in Northern California. But the town is hit by a severe drought, and there's only one thing that can help: another Gek. The Chosen One leaves to find it, but the Enclave soon emerge as a new threat. You find out that before the war, the US government made a lot of contingencies, with many top government officials escaping nuclear annihilation and forming the Enclave, which has been biding its time for over 150 years. Its main base is Control Station Enclave, an offshore oil rig, but it also has a major presence in Navarro, a military base on the west coast. The Enclave plan is, again, preoccupied with the forced evolutionary virus. They want to modify it so that it's lethal and airborne, capable of infecting and killing everybody in the wasteland. When this is done, they'll move in and rebuild America to their own specifications. Obviously, you can't let this happen, because it turns out that while the Chosen One is successful at retrieving another Gek, the entire population of Arroyo has been kidnapped by the Enclave to serve as test subjects for the modified FEV. The Enclave is ultimately destroyed when the oil rig's nuclear reactor is detonated by the Chosen One, who uses the Gek to turn Arroyo into a powerful force in the West. Crucially, by this point in time, the NCR has been founded officially, and is building Shady Sands into one of the most advanced cities in the entire wasteland.
Proving once again that genocide is a viable solution to any problem.
But it's time to skip another few decades, ending up in the year 2277, and in a brand new location, the Capital Wasteland, the ruins of Washington, D.C. A lot of people joined the franchise with Fallout 3, with this game serving as their introduction to the world of Fallout. It starts officially in 2258 though, when the main character, this time dubbed the Lone Wanderer, is born. Your father James, aka Liam Neeson, decides to break out of Vault 101, another Vault Tech experiment where the populace was ordered to never open the vault doors. The Lone Wanderer decides to follow him and is violently expelled from the vault, where you begin the long journey of tracking James down. Eventually, the Lone Wanderer discovers that they were born outside the vault and that the Observer remarkably let them and their father in, after their mother dies in childbirth right at the beginning. Their parents were working on something called Project Purity, a high-tech installation built around the Jefferson Memorial designed to deliver clean water to the wasteland. But it needs a Gek to get up and running properly, and that's where James has gone. The Lone Wanderer tracks him down to Vault 112, where he's been trapped in a simulation called Tranquility Lane. The simulation is being controlled by sadistic scientist Stannis Braun, who incidentally is also the creator of the Gek, but unfortunately, Vault 112 doesn't have one. The Wanderer breaks James out by either going along with Braun or breaking his control of the simulation and freeing the residents.
Son, you've saved me. I was afraid I'd be trapped in there forever. It's so good to see you, but what are you doing here?
James rallies the former Project Purity scientists, now all working in Rivet City. They return to the Jefferson Memorial to get it up and running, but are thwarted by the Enclave, many of whom have survived the events of Fallout 2. To stop the Enclave's leader, Colonel Autumn, from activating the Purifier, James seals himself inside and gives his life, dying from the equipment's massive radiation output. The Wanderer and the other scientists fight off the Enclave and flee through the sewers.
Well, that takes care of that.
Eventually finding sanctuary in the ruins of the Pentagon, now renamed the Citadel and occupied by the Brotherhood of Steel. This faction of the Brotherhood has, by now, gone against the group's original mission statement of hoarding technology for technology's sake. They want to help the people of the Wasteland to rebuild. This has led to the formation of the Brotherhood Outcasts, who roam the Wasteland in red power armor and dismiss outsiders. More on them later. With the Brotherhood's help, the Lone Wanderer determines that Vault 87 still contains its Gek, the only one in the Capital Wasteland. You've got two options for how to get in: through the front door, which requires a lot of anti-rad medicine and equipment, or through the back tunnels, which require you to get in good with the people who live in the caves. The catch is that these people are children, and in their town of Little Lamplight, they hate adults and won't want to help.
You can't very well keep the peace if you've already lost it. So bam!
Unless you do a quest or pass a speech check. Whatever the case, the Wanderer gets into Vault 87 and acquires the Gek, only to be snatched by the Enclave at the last second. They awaken in the Enclave's high-tech base, Raven Rock, and make their way to the President of the United States, John Henry Eden, at his invitation. This is where they find out Enclave's grand plan, which is, yet again, to release the modified FEV and reclaim the wasteland. Eden is easily talked into blowing up Raven Rock, and the Wanderer makes their escape. The final assault begins, with the Brotherhood activating its enormous pre-war robot, Liberty Prime, and taking back Project Purity.
Revised stratagem. Initiate photonic resonance overcharge.
At the end of the game, the Lone Wanderer has two choices. Activate Project Purity themselves, dying in the process, or send Sarah Lyons, one of the Brotherhood, to do it instead, in which case, she dies. The game was later patched to give you the third option to send Fox, the super mutant companion, to do it, since Fox is immune to radiation. But they don't actually die, because the Broken Steel DLC sees them awakening back in the Citadel. From there, you're tasked with wiping out all that remains of the Enclave. Along the way, you'll also get abducted by aliens and have to fight your way off their ship. You'll help the Brotherhood outcasts to gain access to a pre-war stash of dangerous weapons. You'll journey on a riverboat to Maryland and have part of your brain removed. And you'll return to Pittsburgh, seen much earlier in its history in Fallout 76, to free its slaves and cure its plague.
Don't worry about it. Sergeant Montgomery will be your squad commander, and he knows all the ins and outs of the team.
Finally, we're moving on from the surprising density of Fallout 3 to 2010's Fallout New Vegas, where we return to the West to see the expanding NCR, which is now one of the most powerful forces in the Wasteland, come up against a new faction, Caesar's Legion. The Legion model themselves on ancient Rome and have brought peace and security with them from Arizona, albeit peace and security enforced strictly by slavery and crucifixions. The two groups are fighting for control of the Hoover Dam and subsequently Vegas. We're also going to catch back up with Mr. House, owner of Robco, who still controls Vegas from the shadows. Since the war, Vegas has regained its pre-war reputation for hedonism, with large casinos now run by the three families. They were originally wasteland tribes that Mr. House saw potential in, giving them control of the Tops, the Ultra Lux, and Gomorrah, while he kept control of the Lucky 38. The game opens with you, Courier 6, being shot in the head and buried in a shallow grave in Good Springs in 2281. You wake up with no memory of your previous life and decide to hunt down the man who shot you, tracking him all the way to Vegas. The Courier discovers that this was Benny, the leader of the chairmen who run the Tops. He killed the Courier to retrieve the coveted Platinum Chip, which they were trusted to deliver to the Lucky 38.
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
It turns out that the Platinum Chip is a computer chip, carrying upgrades to the Securitron robots that patrol the Strip and keep its citizens, and Mr. House, protected from the NCR and the Legion. There are 4 ways the Courier can proceed. They can side with the NCR, the first and largest faction they encounter, and work to reclaim the Hoover Dam and the city for California. They can work with the Legion and do the opposite, undermining the NCR from within and dispatching Mr. House. They can take Mr. House's side and let him have absolute control with his upgraded army. Or finally, they can take Benny's plan for themselves and become his legacy, creating a truly independent Vegas. We don't know which of the 4 endings is canon, despite widespread debate, and we won't know until the series revisits the Mojave.
Don't disable! I have nothing to say.
But we're traveling all the way back to the East Coast for Fallout 4. After being sealed in cryostasis for decades, the sole survivor is briefly awakened, only to see a hardened mercenary kidnap their newborn son and kill their spouse, before they're sealed away again. They finally wake for good in 2287, 6 years after New Vegas, and leave Vault 111 to track down their son, Sean. This search takes them to Diamond City almost immediately, a large settlement built in the ruins of Fenway Park in Boston. They learn about an alleged conspiracy by members of a shadowy group that may or may not exist called the Institute, to kidnap and replace the citizens of the Commonwealth with synths. By tracking down the mercenary who kidnapped their son and getting the help of one of the factions, the sole survivor discovers that not only is the Institute and its plan real, but that its leader is their son Sean, who's far older than initially thought. We then head into Act 2 of the game, where the sole survivor helps all 4 factions until reaching various points of no return.
You'll accomplish your task and ruin humanity's best hope for the future. The only question left then is why you're standing here. Is it regret? Or did you just come to gloat?
If they decide that Sean is right, there's another plan to get rid of the current human population with pure, non-irradiated people, albeit not by releasing a dangerous virus. They side with the Institute and destroy the other factions, taking the Commonwealth for good. Alternatively, they can side with the Brotherhood of Steel. This is another iteration of the East Coast Brotherhood, but now they've only got one mission: purge the world of synths, mutants, and anything else that isn't completely human. Third, you can team up with the Railroad. They want to destroy the Institute and the Brotherhood because they threaten the synths and their freedom, but they don't care half as much about humankind. Finally, you've got the Minutemen, who just want to protect the people of the Commonwealth. Only the Minutemen and the Railroad can coexist. The other factions all demand you destroy 2 of the others, leaving the Minutemen alone in most cases. Whether Fallout 4 has a canon ending or not, we also don't know, and likely won't until the next game in the series.
Ripped apart and put back together. I hoped I could find my family, cheat time, make us whole again.
But that brings us to the present day in Fallout terms, 2296, 9 years after the events of Fallout 4, and the blockbuster television show that opens in Vault 33. Vault 33 is also in the ruins of Los Angeles, last seen as the Boneyard in Fallout 1. It's in the Los Angeles Vault, a demonstration vault built by Vault-Tec that was fully functioning and used as a shelter, where the Master originally waited to build his army. And it's very close to Shady Sands, now supposedly the sprawling capital of the new California Republic, unless the Legion has had something to say about that. Todd Howard said that he didn't want the TV show to build much on the existing lore, but we can't help but wonder why, if that's the case, LA was chosen as the setting at all.
Mercy!
We'll have to wait to see whether the show sticks to the established Fallout timeline or veers off in another direction. And that was the Fallout Timeline Explained.
I do not think you would be willing to do what it takes to survive up here.
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.